Good day, I am Johan Coetzee, and this series is about global trends and also Namibian trends. I'm not going to mention all the different trends that we're going to looking at in this first video, but in this video we will discuss the increase of the executive at the expense of the legislative and judiciary, which is a global trend as well as a Namibian trend. Now, Namibia is a republic. It's located in just above South Africa, in the southern African part of Africa. I'm a white African and very proud of that. And we have a democracy, what Freedom House described as a failed democracy. And other indexes may vary on that. However, we have a constitution, and in the constitution, the intention could have been that we have tried to separate the executive from the legislative and the judiciary, because these are three very important pillars of any sustainable democracy. Now, democracy in itself is a very wide term that will be discussed in other series. However, we have a unitary state in Namibia, just to put in context, in order to discuss the global and Namibian trend of increasing executive power at the cost of the legislative and judiciary. So we have a unitary state, meaning that we have a single central government with supreme sovereignty. And that means that the central government can withdraw at any time. The discretion and the delegation what have been granted to the 14 regions in Namibia, as well as to the local authority. So because we are a small country, and the founding fathers of the constitution have found it suitable that we try to duplicate, and therefore we have a unitary state, just like France, that is also a unitary state, and some other countries. Bigger countries with bigger populations tend to have federal systems, like Nigeria, like America, for example, like Russia as well as Germany. Now, the trend, the increase of the executive at the cost of the legislative and judiciary power has escalated since COVID-19 internationally. Because you have to remember that during COVID-19, the World Health Organization have decided about the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, and that all member countries of the World Health Organization, now funded by China and Bill Gates, the biggest financiers, that the World Health Organization's regulations need to be followed and implemented in countries. And that was done mostly through all the developed countries. Not much difference between China and United States. So although these countries differ very much in terms of capitalism and socialism with reference to economic ideologies and political systems, at this specific event that happened, that was planned, according to me, and not just an event that happened by accident. But that is a different scenario for another discussion. The point is, most countries in the world have had to oblige to the voluntary implementation of the regulations of the World Health Organization in order to receive funding from the World Health Organization, in order to receive vaccines from the World Health Organization. And that's what also happened in America. And the virus and the information in terms of what happened in China was very much the most extreme form of controlling the people of China. There are also people that claim that since COVID-19 happened, and that is a fact, that there were no uprisings anymore in Hong Kong. Now, prior to that, there were huge uprisings in Hong Kong. More than 700,000 people that have uprised against the Chinese domination in the extension of the control over Hong Kong after they have taken full control of Hong Kong. So there are people that also say that, and I can't vouch for that COVID-19 was planned by the Chinese in order to get Hong Kong under Chinese control again. And since then, we haven't heard anything. Now we know about hundreds of thousands of people that probably died in China, if you can believe the numbers, which we cannot vouch for. The African countries and I think the developing countries were some of the countries that have not all adhered to the voluntary enforcement, put it that way, of the COVID-19 rules and regulations. Now that is made a major shift in this trend of the increasing power of the executive at the cost of fundamental human rights enshrined in their constitutions, like Namibia, and in United States, and in European countries, as well as in the United Nations Charter as well. So if you are a member of the United Nations, and most countries in the world are, then your fundamental freedom of movement, of expression, and association during that time were completely ignored, and that is contradicting the Nuremberg Code that was developed after the Second World War to say that no humans will be used again as for tests and experiments, any scientific tests against their informed consent. Now, despite that, the World Health Organization have tried to enforce these obligations for monetary assistance and vaccine assistance on the different countries and their governments. And the Helsinki Code has also been ignored. Professional codes of different professions have been completely ignored, where, for example, big supermarkets have been kept open while the small businesses that cannot afford it and restaurants have been closed and shut down, and people stayed at home in the so-called attempt to contain the virus by locking people down, by restricting their movement, not allowing them to be in open air where you can receive vitamin D, not allow them to travel freely, and also try to clamp down on medicine that work, like ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, and other medicines that have been proved and tested over the time. Now that is the biggest event of a change and shift of the increase of the executive power over the legislative, because during that time presidents have ignored parliaments. Even in Namibia, the parliament was disbanded the president decided unilaterally on a lockdown due to his emergency powers and decrees, and nobody could move. And if you moved, then you would have been put in jail, as what happened with some people, received fines, and people were locked down for days. They couldn't move. Huge logistical problems, etc., etc. Now, this is an example of how the fundamental human rights, freedom of expression, all those that I've mentioned before, have been completely ignored. And this is the most outrageous executive increase of power by the World Health Organization. And we see it now currently again with the World Health Organization in discussion in order to enforce regulations to be accepted by members. That means that the World Health Organization can by at any time decide on what and when a pandemic and a lockdown will be enforced. And that will then not be voluntary anymore, but compulsory on different countries to follow. And if those countries and their people don't do it, then it will be a criminal offense. Now that is even taking it to another level of extreme, not just increasing the executive power at the expense of the legislative, but also at the expense of the citizens and their fundamental freedoms in the different countries. That needs serious attention and resistance. Now, we also see the power of the World Economic Forum. Now, this forum is represent nobody in specific that have been elected by anybody. And you will see from year to year, people went to Davos, different governments, people that are invited to attend, business people from our country, from Namibia, also the president and the CEO of Otto Albert List attended it, and probably some other people from Namibia as well. Elon Musk. So depending on your ability to serve the needs of the World Health Organization and your influence, younger leaders are then also invited to the World Health Economic Forum headed by Klaus Schwab, that doesn't represent any country, that make decisions on behalf of people in terms of the depopulation of people, in terms of statements like Klaus Schwab said, that I've written a book, that the plan is that you will own nothing with reference to property, and you will be happy. In order to encourage people to eat insects for protein and to have artificial meat to feed people. The whole scenario about the World Economic Forum, that there will be an overpopulation in the world, that is contradicting the global trends of living standards that always increase with all cultures, ethnic groups, races, and the result of that, then depopulation, fertility rates decrease, as already happened in China and Russia and Germany and Japan, Italy, and to mention only a few countries. So the World Economic Forum make decisions that's been enforced by them because of the influence and the power of the group of multinational corporations and influential leaders like the Rockefellers and those people in power that enforce, try to enforce also their control towards establishing a global government. And we have seen it with COVID-19, with the World Health Organization, as already explained. But we also see it still strengthening on a yearly basis, despite COVID-19 and the exposing of that in the European Union and the defaults and Fauci and his associates and people that's been sued in a class suits, and also already people probably and then have been taken out as a result of the Khazarian, and the white hats and the black hats, if you want to read, Google further about it. So the World Health Organization, the World Economic Forum, is a group that determined the Sustainable Development Goals, not the United Nations, as people normally believe. Then the World Economic Forum also received immunity and protection, diplomatic immunity and protection, and they, as a result of that, they cannot be sued in any country, and that is a serious mistake and a serious trend that is happening that should not be allowed.